So what are some of the functions of these types of cells from the globus pallidus external back up to the dorsal striatum? Why the need to talk back up to the dorsal striatum? Well, in large part, these two nuclei, the dorsal striatum, will determine what our actions are. Remember the example with the OCD or anything really. We extracted a specific cell from here and we drew it out and we highlighted a specific spine, and that specific spine, every time there's a connection, that specific spine in that specific cell, it means the same thing. So as the caudate and the putamen are activated, it knows, based off of the cells involved and the value involved, what action that the living organism is going to carry out based off of how that living organism is constructed. Remember, right here, within the basal ganglia, but more specifically, the dorsal striatum, who defines motivation? We don't necessarily define motivation. Our synaptic connections and who we are within our central nervous system does. This is what defines motivation, because you have to view it from the sense of being a central nervous system. You're just going to respond. That's all the central nervous system wants to do. It doesn't like to work. Remember, we talked about the habits. A lot of habits are here, especially laterally. That's because the living organism prefers habits. Why? Because it automates responses. We don't have to think about things, and it conserves energy. The brain, one of the top goals of the brain, what it's trying to accomplish is conserve biological energy. And whenever things are just habit, you don't have to think about things. You don't have to work. It'll just respond. Remember those connections that are bigger. This is called morphology. These things grow in size. These bigger connections become preferred. So the brain will just send all of its signals to there. So with this archaea cell, it has some functional roles here. And a big role here, because everything that I just ranted on, caudate nucleus and the putamen, is determining our actions. So these cells speaking back up to the dorsal striatum will help pause it. It has action cancellation, okay? Not only like completely, but maybe it's just a pause. Remember, we talked about the sequencing and the timing of typing. So these archaea cells, I should say, are heavily involved in this precise movements like this. Another thing that projecting back up to this will allow is to focus and kind of reevaluate. This pause here allows those inputs from the cortex. Remember, some of these dorsal striatum inputs are from the cortex, the prefrontal cortex. In large part, you can think about these cell types are very similar to the ACC. We talked about the ACC in quite detail. They have very similar roles. These provide a large input to the dorsal striatum because of the conflict monitoring, evaluating risk-reward, action selection type of things.